Alright guys, Paul back here again with a brand new comparison video, and in this one we're going to be taking a detailed look at the brand new 2020 Eddie Guerrero Signature Series Undisputed V2 Replica Belt and comparing that to a 2006 Undisputed V2 Adult Size Replica Belt. Let's get started. Alright then, so in this video we're going to be only talking about the plates. The strap is kind of irrelevant. This is not really a strap we can compare to this. The materials on the newer one are a bit better. It's still a fairly stiff strap. They're both simulated leather, and I don't really want to compare a laser printed design to the stamped WWE designs on this, so only the plates in this video. Right, so as I mentioned, this is the brand new 2020 re-release of this replica. Just by looking at them, I hope it's obvious there are differences, but what I will mention is this belt has 6mm thick plates. They are casted in the newer process that WWE make their replica belts, and this one is in the older style, which is the sheet metal, 2mm thick, and the details were stamped into the plate. So, first off, we'll talk about, I mean, sitting here, the first thing that's obvious to me is the curve. I hope that comes across well on camera. The monstrous curve that's on this thing, it is ridiculous, especially compared to this. These are both as standard when they arrived from WWE shop compared to that. Now, not only are the plates on that one 6mm thick, which make it a hell of a lot heavier, but the curve on it it's not even close. This is ridiculous. Okay, so aside from the curve and the thickness of the plates, also I will put down the weights of the belts down here. So the Eddie belt and the Undisputed V2. I hope that worked. Yeah, so this belt is significantly heavier. It's holding it just feels like a more solid and bigger belt, and that's partly due to the weight, partly due to the fact that the plates are so much thicker and they feel more sturdy, they feel like there's more to it. Right, we'll talk about the differences between them. First off, they are both 6-platers. There's a few different variations between this belt that were used on TV. Some had 5 plates, some had 6. The replicas come as standard as 6-platers. All the plates on this one range from 5 to 6mm thick, and all of them on this one are 2mm thick. The details on all of these are stamped, all of these are casted. These are hollow. If you want to see a full in-depth review of this and its hollow plates, check out my Eddie Guerrero Signature Series Replica Belt review. I went very in-depth about that and why the hollow plates don't matter. Right, so starting off, it's difficult to compare them because they're so different. Like, honestly, I cannot emphasize how much better this new replica from 2020 is, but I hope it will become obvious as I go through this video. So, when looking at the design itself on the new one, it actually is a lot more accurate to what the real belt had. The real design looked almost identical to this, except that under Ent Inc, it had Jamar and the year that he made it, or his website details, Jamar being the original belt maker of this belt. Whereas the V2 from 2006, obviously you can see, since it's shallow, the paint detail on property of World Wrestling Entertainment, it looks terrible. You can read it, but it doesn't look good. Whereas on the casted, because the details have so much depth to them, there's so much room for the paint to sit in rather than spilling over the design. It looks so sharp, it looks so impressive, and the detail just looks fantastic. Like, look at the scratches in the WWE logo on the cast versus the stamped. It's not even close. And as far as accuracy goes, this has the bigger logo, which is accurate, and it doesn't read, the V2 reads Entertainment TM, which the real belt didn't. It had the Ent Inc. So if you're nitpicking like me, which I do on these reviews just to give a full overview, makes a big difference. It genuinely does. And again, just the detail of them is insane. Like, even the floral details at the sides of each side plate, you can hardly see on the 2mm version these details, whereas on the 6mm Eddie belt, they are so clear, it's outstanding. Moving on, again, both do have simulated stones. The stones on the newer belts do look a little bit better. They're still not great. They're plastic stones, so I will be replacing them on my personal belt with cubic zirconia, which will look a lot better. Changing them for cubic or Swarovski crystals is a massive improvement regardless. Right, so a similar story on the second side plate. The logo, again, is probably the more obvious part to look at just because of how much sharper the scratches in the logo itself are. So probably at the tips of the top of the W's, you can really see the difference between the detail. And again, the floral detail around the plate. There's detail on the 6mm version. Realistically, looking at the 2mm version, there's not much there. It's just filler detail stamped in, whereas on the 6mm version you can actually see the detail, so it feels less like filler, if that makes sense. Obviously that's still the purpose of it, is to fill up space and kind of have a design, but the fact that you can actually see it, you can feel all the details on the 6mm version makes it a lot more impressive in my opinion. Okay, and moving on to the inner side plates, which is where the differences really start to show up, and that's the two inner side plates and the center plates is really a lot of the differences. Partly because one of the biggest complaints with all the Undisputed replicas up until this version was the fact that they put way too much paint on them. Now, if you don't know about the paint on the Undisputed belts, you can probably tell immediately on the side plate. There's a lot of paint around the floral areas, the filler, even the lion itself has paint in it. And you might wonder, okay, the one up top doesn't have any of that paint. The only paint is the border and the McMahon family crest shield. So why is that? There was one version of the Undisputed used on TV. I believe it was the version 1.5, which was used for like 2 weeks. I could be wrong. I think it was only held by Hulk Hogan, and it did have all this additional paint. So for whatever reason, every replica belt has been based off of that paint scheme instead of the paint scheme used on every other Undisputed. Be the one held by Brock, Eddie, Big Show, Kurt Angle, the one that John Cena eventually retired. All of those had no paint here, which was always the annoying part of these replicas, because one of the things I was asked to do more than almost any other service was paint removals. So I would remove this paint and make it look more like this. Thankfully, they've done it as standard on the new replica belt, and it looks fantastic. You can even see the paint on the McMahon family crest was wrong on this one. You can see black paint around the white shield itself. On the old version, it actually has a gold border to the shield and a black ring around that. Obviously, just the attention to detail is so much improved on the new version. It blows me away, honestly. As I mentioned on the full review of this belt, even in the McMahon family crest, you can read the writing that's in the blue banner. Whereas if you look at the V2, that's not even close to being text. It's blurry, it's just blurry dots. There's no detail in that. So if you really look at the text difference, it's outstanding, honestly. It's the same story on the other side plates, so we'll just move on to the center plate now. Okay, and this is really the biggest talking point of this belt is the center plate, because this one is fantastic, honestly. It looks so much like obviously replica belts are never going to be, a $400 replica is never going to match a $3,000 real belt that's handmade, acid etched, gold plated. But this is as close as I've ever seen a replica belt to the real thing, honestly. One thing I want to, first again, we've got the paint that's not present on this one, but the paint that is all over this one. So you can see around the floral areas here, the stone holders, down the sides here, again, even this little part just outside of the globe. And of course down here under the champion banner and next to the nameplate. So all of these areas on the V2 are painted. On the Eddie belt they're not. And obviously the Eddie belt is the more accurate version, and it honestly looks fantastic. One of the main things I was impressed with the Eddie belt for was these stone holders. Now that might just be like, why do you care about the stone holders? But if you look at the stone holders on the Eddie belt, they have a texture to them. That's amazing. Like, texture on belts didn't really start properly now until the Brahma Bull belt, the Rock replica belt. That was the first one that I noticed that they started redoing this texture again, which gave me a lot of hope for this belt, and I was so happy when they came out with this and it had the texture on the stone holders, because you can see the new one has that texture that was hand done by JMR on the real belts. In this case, it's simply part of the casted design, so you can see at different angles of light that texture will catch the light, and it kind of makes the stones pop a little bit more. On the older version, the stone holders don't have any texture. They're literally just a black kind of crosshair ring painted in. Similarly, the one on the champion banner, texture on the new one, it's just a gold ring on the old one. So it's minimal things like that, but it makes a huge difference, because it tells me that they were paying attention to the details of the belt when designing this new replica belt. The old replicas like this, you always felt that, yeah, they were basing it off of the design, but they were never properly replicating, if that makes sense, because there was so many errors, there was so many inaccuracies, the paint was all over the place. Whereas the newer belts, in my opinion, when looking at this, when I look at it, I think, okay, they probably made that by looking at the real belt. They might have even had the real belt in hand. I am incredibly impressed with the newer replica belts. Not just this one, the new Oval IC is amazing. The brand new United States replica is incredible. So WWE has properly stepped up their game with replica belts, and this I probably think is my favorite so far that I've seen, just because I'm a massive fan of the Undisputed design on its own. And for years I was owning these and hoping they would make a better version of this belt and a better version of the big gold, which rumours are it might be coming, so we'll see in the near future. And one of my criticisms of this belt, unfortunately, is that the nameplate still unscrews from the back. Again, it's a nitpick detail, but it was so close. That's the only thing. That's the only thing that annoys me about the nameplate, is it was the last thing really that they needed to do to make it as good as it could be. Again, this nameplate also unscrews from the back, so that is a design element that matches. The Eddie Guerrero nameplate, again, as I mentioned in my full in-depth review, impresses me a lot because this is the same font that was used on his nameplate. A lot of the Undisputed nameplates that came with this replica belt, when this was released, WWE offered custom nameplates, they offered superstar nameplates, and they were always done in the same font as the champion banner, which, as far as I'm aware, no nameplate on TV ever used this particular font. So again, that just leads to my point I was making, that it shows how closely they were following the design, that they used the same font on the nameplate. Again, it seems like a really small thing, but it's more so because it tells me that they were paying attention, more so than the fact that it is the same. It's not like I'm freaking out over a font. It's that I'm happy that it shows the level of detail they were going in. I already mentioned the stones, but like I said, both have simulated stones. The stones on the newer one, are a little bit better. They're not overly better. They're a little bit different shape. The bigger ones, they kind of have more angles to them, whereas these are a little more pointed, standard stones. Again, I still would replace the stones on any of these Eddie belts. Plates this good, you really should have real Swarovski or real cubic zirconia. Let's quickly go to the back of this belt. So obviously we're not talking about the strap, but the amount of screws that are on this thing makes a difference. Obviously this belt's a lot lighter. I mentioned the weight at the start of the video, and this one's a lot heavier, so you're happy to see all the additional screws, and it makes a difference. This one's still not likely to break apart, but the risk is always there, so it's nice to see them actually make the effort to make sure the belts are as secure as possible. One thing a lot of people have asked me is if these 2020 Eddie Guerrero plates will fit onto one of these older straps. Unfortunately, they won't. It's not only because this plate, the center plate on this one, has more screw holes. The positioning of the screws, especially on the side plates, is completely different. So you would have to end up punching more holes into the older strap to make it fit, which would then leave you with the old holes in place on the back, so it wouldn't look good. So I wouldn't recommend it. Obviously you could make it fit, but these plates deserve to be on real leather. This guy is real leather. So yeah, I will have videos of this on real leather very soon. I have 3 or 4 of these downstairs at the moment that have been sent to me to re-leather, so we'll do a whole array video of a bunch of them, and it will be fantastic. You wait, you'll see. So I mentioned in my Eddie video, if you're asking me if I recommend this belt, yes, definitely. Even the additional cost for the strap, if you're still looking to re-leather it. Who knows when they'll release this on a standard black strap. It might be a long time. So if you're desperate for it, get it on the Eddie strap and re-leather it. If you can wait. Hopefully we get a standard version in the near future, and hopefully we get a remake of the 3D WWE Big Gold. That's what I'm holding out for. And the Ruthless Aggression tags. Make those, WWE. Those would be amazing. Amazing. Yeah, tag champs. Thank you for watching. Cheers. People power.
Yo, monkeys, it's me, DDP. And if you want to get one of the greatest belts made for you, go to Paulmartinbelts. That's right, sucker.